We're talking to Nitin Gokhale today. He is NDTV Security and Strategic Affairs Editor. And last week he wrote a rather impassioned article on the Indian Army. I would imagine it has come from all the recent exposés that have come out in the press. And I think your article basically spends a lot of pages talking about what the Army is, what it does, valuing its work and valuing its worth, especially in a democracy. Tell me, what exactly instigated you to write this?
Well, two things. One, I must sort of clarify and tell everybody that I come from a Fauji background. I have not served in the army, but my father was a soldier and he served the army for...
I could see that in the sensitivity of it.
That's right.
Because very few people who are not involved personally with the army do not realize what a life it is, what it means to the family.
Absolutely.
And how much of it is give and not take.
Exactly. And it came from there. In fact, about 6 months ago, I had written a piece on what the forge and the parents taught me. And I had described the upbringing and the childhood and the struggles that the soldiers... My father was an ordinary soldier. He retired as a Subedar Major. He came from the ranks and retired at that. And I started working a year after he retired. So whatever strides that I've made in life in the last 30 years as a journalist since 1983, I owe nearly 80% of that to the upbringing in the army and the kind of time I spent with my father all across the nation, struggling with him and with the conditions that we lived in. So I always get a little perturbed when, the army, which is of such great
Describe
integrity.
some of the conditions that you lived in.
Well, in the 60s and the 70s that I grew up in, conditions were pathetic as far as the ordinary soldier was concerned. The soldiers lived very far away from their families. I remember my father spent almost 15 years of his 33 years in the east, in Arunachal Pradesh and in the distant places of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. We were living in what is called separated family quarters in Pune or Lonavala or wherever we could. So my mother brought 3 of us boys up. She brought us up, gave us the values, education. Father was never with us. We never had, we couldn't contact him because he would always write a letter which will come to us after a month or so. So we grew up almost without him, yet his values, his shadow and his presence was always there. When we traveled for 5 days, say from Maharashtra to Arunachal Pradesh on a train without reservations, without any kind of assistance. And yet we survived. We learned to adapt. We learned to take life as it comes. We learned to mix and adapt to
Has it changed at all? Has it improved at all for the average?
Hugely.
It has?
Hugely. And that is why I'm saying that now that the army has got a lot of married accommodation for people at distant places, it has given much more money in the pockets of the soldiers, ordinary soldiers, than before. And yet that standing that the army had in the 60s and the 70s is no longer there, visible in the Civi street, as we call it in the Fauji parlance.
So tell me, when Indian Express broke this story about the troop movements, what was your reaction? Should those stories not be done?
No, I've said that in my article also. If you see that, I don't object to anybody's right as a journalist to do stories. And it's not just Indian Express story that prompted me to really do the piece that I wrote. It's a combination of several things that have been happening for the past 2 or 3 years, I would say, but 6 months certainly. And why I say this is because many of the stories emanate out of half-truths and lies, as I call them in my article also. And I'm knowing the army intimately as I do, or the armed forces intimately as I do, both as a child and now as a professional for the past 30 years covering the military. It pains me that one last institution which is secular, which is above a lot of other institutions in terms of camaraderie, jointness, teamwork, all that is being sought to be sort of brought down in
No, but
people's...
everything that you say is true.
Yeah.
But there's also the fact that there has been corruption in the army, which has been exposed repeatedly, also about generals who retire and before they are supposed to join companies that deal in arms, do illegal things. There's been scams, one after the other, fake encounters, all kinds of things done for promotions. There's scandal after scandal. Now, would you blame the media for that, or would you blame the fact that there is all this happening in the army and then it is reported?
No, I'm not blaming the media at all. I mean, let's be very clear about this. I'm a media person. I have exposed a number of scandals myself, be it Sukna, be it the shortcomings in Kargil, or why Kargil
Does it
shouldn't have happened.
demoralize the army, you think, when these things happen?
No, the entire thrust of my article was, or my entire thought process is not about demoralizing the army as such. I'm saying that we are planting willy-nilly a suspicion in the minds of ordinary Indians in the streets who do not understand all these issues about the Indian soldier, or his loyalty, or his, let's say, what should I say, his commitment to the country. Then they will be like other police forces. If the army is seen in those light, or in the same parameters as the police or the paramilitary forces, then we are actually weakening the army. That is my thrust of the argument. I am not against.
But don't you think that the Indian public is aware enough to know all that you're saying, that you've written in your article, of what the army does, which they have experienced in disaster situations and during war? Don't you think the average Indian knows and respects the army, except when all these scandals come up? It does not color the whole army, but it does expose the fact that these people are doing corrupt things.
No, certainly. I mean, Indian public knows, but I'm saying that if you repeatedly keep doing this, we are actually chipping away at the...
Yeah, but then maybe the army should repeatedly stop having scams. Then there won't be
I think they are taking steps, and I think let's also face this fact that, I mean, I know that this argument doesn't hold in very many cases of a lot of people in the army themselves say that we shouldn't be talking in the sense of saying that the society is also sort of the values are going down, so ours people also come from the same society, so their values should also be not be held to higher standards. But I think the army or the armed forces are completely different, and I agree with the exposes that are happening. If they're based on facts, certainly, I mean, punish them. I mean, you go to the highest extent. But remember, in every case, be it the Helka, be it any of the corruption cases, all these people have been punished immediately. Be it a 3-star general or a 2-star general, booze brigadier or a Dal general, they've all been sent to rigorous imprisonment or whatever. So the army does have what I call swift justice system. Nowhere else it happens. So that also must be taken into account.
What did you think of the Indian Express story? Did you believe it? Did you believe that General V.K. Singh was actually had ordered these troop movements to kind of rattle the government?
No, I don't believe that. But I know for a fact that these exercises had taken place. So the facts are not disputable. But the point that Indian Express was trying to make, that he was trying to do it for rattling the government, I think is far-fetched.
Why do you say that?
Because 2 units, a total of 1,000 men and maybe 20 tanks is not going to sort of spook the government. Government is not so weak, shouldn't be so weak.
Then why did they call the minister back from Malaysia?
You mean the defense secretary?
Defense secretary, sorry.
Well, he came back, or he was called back, because I remember reporting it on the 17th of January. He was called back because they had to file a caveat in the Supreme Court after the general had filed a case in the Supreme Court on the 16th. So he actually came back on the 16th late night or 17th early morning. So he didn't come back on the 16th itself. He just came back about 5 or 6 hours ahead of his pre-scheduled arrival.
So that was this after the movements had started?
The movements had been taking place in the previous week, and also suppose the movement going by what Indian Express has said, and I have no reasons to dispute that fact because I also know these movements take place. On the 16th, if the movement has taken place, when did the Defense Secretary call the DGMO? Did he call him on 16th night, going by what the reports say? 16th night he wasn't here. And if he called them on the 17th night, what did he do for those 12 hours?
17th morning.
17th morning, he didn't know. The paper report says that office was opened late at night, which their date they have not mentioned. So if it is 17th late night, then for 12 hours after coming back...
I understood it was the 16th night, 17th morning.
But 16th he wasn't here.
No, it came in 17th AM.
17th morning. So when would he call him? 16th night he cannot call the DGMO. If he came back on 17th morning, Would he call him on 16th night and have a meeting and ask him to send the troops back?
No, but didn't the report say that he called him on the 16th night
It
to
didn't
arrive
say
in 17th
specifically.
morning?
As far as I know, as far as I remember, I don't think the dates were given. It was kept very vague. But aside from those facts, I am saying this, and anybody will tell you who has worked with the government or has seen the government working. 2 units moving in when you had about 20,000 troops already in Delhi for Army Day parade, which had just got over a day prior to that, shouldn't spook the government. I mean, the governments are, if they are so weak, then I think we don't deserve to have such kind of governments.
But given the sort of distrust and the birth date issue, I guess the atmosphere is such that, the government is not comfortable with the army, and neither is the army comfortable with the government.
No, let's not equate army with the government. If the government is not comfortable with the army chief, the current army chief, the government has all the right to sack him. They should have sacked him if they were so uncomfortable. What stops them from sacking him even now after he's gone to court and lost the case, as they say? They could have sacked him. They should have sacked him if they were so uncomfortable. Are they so uncomfortable with him? That's the question we need to ask.
Well, perhaps there were other reasons why they didn't
What would both be those? I would like to know, because I have not been able to figure out why can't they sack him. Because individuals are not important.
Well, one can only speculate.
Yeah.
I mean, you can think of 10 different reasons why they wouldn't sack him, but it would be speculation. I mean, I have no proof over it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I would think if the government was so uncomfortable with him or was distrustful of him, first thing they should have done was to sack him.
Do you think that his birth date issue was mismanaged by the defense minister?
First by the army itself, and then by the ministry. The defense minister himself, I won't hold him personally liable because he goes by the advice that the secretaries or the bureaucrats give him. So first blame should go to the rivalry within the army itself, between the generals, which all of us know what has happened. I mean, they're not blameless at all. It started there. And then later when it came to the ministry could have put the foot down and said, look, this is the end of it. You can't go beyond this. But they didn't. They let it fester. And here we are.
So he was ill-served by the government?
He was.
And he did have a genuine...
well, to my mind, yes, certainly. He also made a mistake. The army chief also made a mistake. When the Supreme Court refused to adjudicate on the matter that he wanted adjudicated, he should have quit there. But his supporters would say that then that would mean...
that he was wrong.
That he was wrong. And so therefore...
Any lawyer will say that you should hang on, otherwise it will look like you've admitted guilt.
That's one. And two, then you can't fight by going outside. A similar logic applies to what he should have done when he accepted 2000 or whatever that birth date that was told to him to accept. Because people take decisions at the spur of the moment,
yes,
and they have personal reasons to do it. So I can't really go into it. But this whole atmosphere that you talked about is something which is not very good for the armed forces.
But do you think that it is now these arms dealers and all these people are in any way going to stop their activities?
No, these are two different things. Arms dealers have been there for ages. I mean, they've been there since 1960s when you have the Jeep scandal. Since then you have had dealers, Krishna Menon and Mundra, all that. So you can't wish them away. You can't wish away the manipulation that goes on in contracts. But you need to have a minister who takes a holistic view and says that, look, these things will keep happening, and not cancel contracts at the drop of a hat or delay them or blacklist firms that are giving you critical equipment. 9 major firms blacklisted, so where are you going to get your equipment from? So I think the whole mismanagement in defense ministry is something that we have to look at as a larger picture.
So it's a mess.
It is a mess.
Well, thank you very much, Nitin.